Welcome to The Sideshow.
All right, welcome to another edition of the Sideshow. And today, Mike is going to be taking the lead. So, Mike, why don't you let the audience know what we'll be talking about today?
All right, thanks, Mark. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite sides, which is Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Deja Vu, Side One. And
Good one.
Yeah, well, it is by a fairly big band, and I think a relatively important band. And I don't think there's any word that is the most kind of relevant is sort of to focus what this album focuses on in terms of music and history is Woodstock.
Hmm.
And that's not just because the final track on side one is called Woodstock and is about the Woodstock Music Festival, but just when this album came out and just the tone of the music and everything, I think that if anyone who is interested in not so much what happened at Woodstock in terms of the music that was played, but just its social and cultural significance at the end of the 1960s, I think that this album really sums it up in a number of different ways. This album was released in March of 1970. Woodstock was in August of 1969. I think that, and this album has been described by some, it's sort of like, there was Woodstock, but then, when Woodstock was over, people had to make their way back to wherever they lived and get up on Monday morning and go back to work.
Hmm.
And, it's this album in some ways is sort of like what came out of the hangover from the Monday morning after Woodstock.
Yeah.
And it just it and I mean and the song Woodstock, which was actually that is performed on this album on this side, was written by Joni Mitchell, not by the members of the
Yeah.
band. But the performance, it's just an ebullient. Uh, uh, it's a very positive, joyful anthem in a lot of ways. But I think the album as a whole and the songs on side one also kind of serve as you know your entire life is not going to be like Woodstock.
Hmm.
And there's some things that can be taken from the Woodstock generation, and there's some things that can be left behind, and there's going to be new things coming up in the future. And just generally speaking, I think that's where this album kind of fits in historically relative to the whole Woodstock music festival. What do you think,
Yeah.
Mark?
Well, and I think it's kind of interesting. Well, there's a couple different themes there. First, about Woodstock itself. I mean, if you look at where a lot of the people in the Woodstock generation, are right now. I mean, they ended up, turning into some of the greediest, meanest people in the most established establishment ever, right? On the same token, though, there truly was something special that was going on during that time. It was this huge mix of protest yet humanity at the same time, and music sat right in the middle of that. And I actually think that when you take a look at Crosby, Stills, Nash, or Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, that there was just this perfect intersection for them, for the band, and then their fans, that where all that stuff met. Their music coming out of kind of a folk music sound with these vocals and these vocal harmonies that they were so good at, and really introduced to mainstream music. I mean, if you don't have Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, you don't have the Eagles, right? I think as an example where really popularizing and how powerful those musical harmonies can be, and I think the timing was really right, and to some extent, I think that they as a band became kind of lucky about how well the timing worked for them. I don't think that they worked particularly well together as a band, and they were a super group that came together, mainly because they sounded so good together, and they did. They just had the ranges of those voices, especially with Crosby, Stills, and Nash. I mean, it just worked, and I think that they realized that after just doing a little bit of singing together. But they didn't necessarily, as a group, they'd all been successful in previous groups. They were all kind of known and established when they came together, and I think it showed a little bit in a lot of breakups for the band and separations and coming back together, and even the way that they worked on the album that we're gonna talk about was pretty segmented. But whether it was them, whether it was the time, whether it was the events that were going on. I mean, Woodstock, people have tried to replicate it. It can't be replicated. It was like the perfect confluence of a couple things that just can't be replicated anymore. If for no other reason because of the insurance liability. Let alone the times and common feelings that people have. But I don't think that there's any other band that is more associated with that time than Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Maybe Jimi Hendrix and the
Yeah.
and then maybe, but the notion of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and I don't think that they even performed that much as a band together when Woodstock actually happened. They were pretty fresh as a band when this happened.
They well, and the the background for CSNY is really kind of an interesting story, and one of the reasons why they didn't always work so well together, the four of them, it was more a matter of personality than music.
Oh yeah,
When
yeah.
when they were, I mean, when they were on,
Mm-hmm.
but they were four very strong musical personalities. Each
Yeah.
of whom had success before they became part of this group, and each of which could have led their own group or solo. They all had solo careers
Yeah.
as well. So it's sort of there were too many chefs stirring the stew, and it resulted in a number of just fabulous recordings, but they were never really able to sustain it because they weren't like a band
Yeah.
as in the conventional sense. The four members originally all had success in other bands.
Yes.
David Crosby was a member of the original Byrds,
Mm-hmm.
who in the late '60s, mid to late '60s, were a big, successful band. With Mr. Tambourine Man, Turn, Turn,
Oh yeah.
Turn,
Yeah.
etc. And David Crosby was part of that, and he actually left the Byrds, I believe, in 1967. But he was a rock star in his own right. Before he'd become involved with Stills, Nash, or Neil Young, in any significant way. Uh, uh, Both Stephen Stills and Neil Young had been in Buffalo Springfield,
Mm-hmm.
and which was I think a very important band in the mid to late '60s. Not as popular as the Byrds, but kind of an important band. And there were members of that band that went on to form like Poco,
Mm-hmm.
a '70s sort of country rock type band, and Neil Young he had two solo records out before the original CSN formed.
Yeah.
His in 1968 his kind of eponymously titled solo album, and then Everyone Knows This Is Nowhere with Crazy Horse. And
Mm-hmm.
that was a big big album in Neil Young's history that had Cinnamon Girl, Cowgirl in
Yeah.
the Sand, Down by the River. So he was an established rock star separately from Buffalo Springfield.
Yeah.
And Graham Nash had been in I believe it was originally an English band, the Hollies,
Yep.
uh, and, uh, and so he had success as a rock performer, before they'd come together. Originally, I believe it was sometime in 1968 that Stephen Stills, David Crosby, and Graham Nash were at some gathering of people where they were playing music,
Mm-hmm.
and the three of them started singing together, and the three of them realized very quickly that they had their voices naturally melded together in harmony, and they should do something about it.
Yeah.
And the three of them formed a group, and it was called Crosby, Stills, and Nash. And so it was their three names. It wasn't, they didn't come up with a name.
A little bit of the ego of each of the members, kind of.
Yeah. So they I guess they didn't want to present themselves as a group. They wanted to present themselves as three musicians who were performing together. Yeah. And their first album came out in May of 1969, which was a few months before Woodstock. And that had the Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, Long Time Gone, Wooden Ships, Marrakesh Express, Guinevere. I mean, a number of excellent songs that were very successful very quickly. And they, even though they had recorded that album, they'd never performed live as a group in front of people until it was like the day or 2 days before their performance at Woodstock. They played a concert in Chicago as Crosby, Stills, and Nash. And then they performed at Woodstock. It was either the next day or a day or two later. And if you see the Woodstock movie, they say this is only the second time we played in front of people, man.
Yeah.
Which was true. Now Neil Young had actually become part of the group before Woodstock. So in the time between the recording of the first album and the performance at Woodstock, Neil Young had kind of become part of their group, and Neil Young did not want to be recorded or filmed during the Woodstock concert. And so what you see in the Woodstock movie, it's just Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Neil Young isn't there, but he did perform with them, and they played like an acoustic set and an electric set, and whatnot. So that was Woodstock, and that was kind of I think that the only thing you see in the Woodstock movie is the Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, but that sort of fit very well, as you say, kind of into the whole Woodstock vibe.
Yeah.
That kind of hit upon it very well. But like I was saying, Woodstock was over, and the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young also performed at the Altamont concert in the San Francisco area, which was in December of 1969. And that was sort of proof, because as you say, Woodstock is something that can never be created. And one of the reasons is what happened at Woodstock, to a certain extent, was kind of spontaneous.
Yeah.
It turned into a free festival because they realized they couldn't control the influx of humanity that was
descending upon this farm field.
Yeah, and so they decided to make it a free concert, and we're going to lose money, but they, you can see the guys talking on film in the Woodstock movie. This is, but you can't. Planned spontaneity is an oxymoron. It doesn't. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
You can't do it, and how badly things went at the Altamont concert sort of proves that.
Yep.
And so and that's something that these guys were they experienced firsthand before the Deja Vu album, which was released in March of 1970.
Hmm.
So it was, 8 months or so after Woodstock, 8 or 9 months after Woodstock, and about 3 or 4 months after Altamont, when this
Hmm.
album came out, and so that aspect of things was in everybody's minds at the time that this album
Yeah.
came out, and that's why I say it's sort of like this came out of the hangover post Woodstock,
Yeah. Yeah.
and Richard Nixon was still in office, the Vietnam War was still going on, and all of the troubles that in the world that existed before Woodstock were still there.
That's right. That's right. They didn't
And
go anywhere.
so this album really came out at a unique moment, and uh, things were changing. That like James Taylor, a singer songwriter, I think was on Apple Records
Hmm.
by this point. The Grateful Dead, in a few months, their Working Man's Dead album was going to be released, and we've done a
Hmm.
podcast on that
Yeah.
record, and that was influenced by this group and was actually
Hmm.
recorded in the same studio at around the same time that this album was being recorded.
Hmm.
This album was released before Working Man's Dead, and then just some of the members of the Eagles, people like
Yeah.
Linda Ronstadt, and Jackson Brown were
Hmm.
starting to evolve at around this time. And so it really heralded kind of a new era, that it was connected to Woodstock, but was definitely post Woodstock.
Hmm.
And so that was the moment that this album came out. And I've got a copy of the record here. It's got a very interesting cover. It's brown, and it's got a photograph of all four members, and then the drummer and the bass player,
Hmm.
Greg Reeves and Dallas Taylor, and it's kind of a sepia picture, kind of a period like Western picture. There's a gatefold. The there's pictures of the members of the band,
Hmm.
and some information on there. There's nothing on the back. It's just plain brown.
Yeah.
But and the photograph of the band, it's something where there's a separate piece of paper that's glued onto the cover. It's just a unique, sort of like an old timey record,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and to kind of set the tone.
Well,
And
I think it's interesting, just kind of looking at we've been talking about the formation of the band. Certainly, one of the greatest super groups ever. When I think I don't know of any other band that had more Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductions than this band. Because to your point, whether it be through the Byrds or the Hollies or Buffalo Springfield, all four of these members were not only inducted as members of this band, but were also inducted from their other work from bands. And Neil Young was inducted as a solo artist as well. So he had three
yeah,
inductions. I mean, quite a concentration of people who who the industry has considered important artists, and they for some periods of time, because there was a lot of breakups and comebacks together and this type of thing, but a lot of talent in one place to be producing music, and then layer that over the significance of the times with events like Woodstock and everything that was happening, and kind of some of the turbulence in life. I think one more layer to add in was the fact that their presence in Laurel Canyon, in California, where there was so many other artists of this time that were really kind of percolating, and this idea of getting together and singing and performing, and different people connecting. I mean, there was a lot going on in Laurel Canyon, whether it be with Joni Mitchell, who wrote the song Woodstock. But the Mamas and the Papas and the Monkees, were those guys are. There was a lot of musical people that were hanging out in Laurel Canyon. A lot of creativity. Laurel Canyon was to music at the time what Silicon Valley was to computers. It's just a lot of stuff going on then.
Fun fact: Stephen Stills applied to be in the Monkees,
Oh, really?
and it didn't. But that didn't work out. In any case, Deja Vu, side one, and side one has 5 different tracks. The first 4 each come from one of the 4 members, and then the 5th track, which is Woodstock, written by Joni Mitchell, is really where all 4 of them are kind of they're playing together.
Yeah.
And it's not a song that was written by one of the members. And the first song on the side, the opening track on the album, is a Stephen Stills song called "Carry On," and we'll just we can play a clip of just the beginning of that song, and then we'll pick it up on the other side.
One morning I woke up and I knew it was all. A new day, a new way, and new eyes to see it all. Go your way, I'll go mine, kept on.
All right. Well, you can hear there fairly strong acoustic guitar sound that comes in on the beginning. Not hard rocking, but not calm either. I mean, there's some urgency in the guitar playing, and then they come in singing together. And one morning I woke up and I knew you were really gone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not necessarily uplifting, but the music isn't defeatist either.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the as it says, go your way, I'll go mine, and carry on. Rejoice, rejoice. We have no choice but to carry on.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's opening up this what I've chosen to kind of label the post Woodstock period with look, I woke up in the morning and my girlfriend was gone, but we all have no choice but to carry on.
Yeah.
And there's nothing particularly profound about that, but he's the group is putting it out in a at least at the beginning of the song in a very I would call urgent way.
Yeah. And I'd agree with you. It's like the theme isn't the whole negative aspect of I woke up this morning and my girlfriend isn't here and she's never going to be here again. It is the focus on carry on. And there's a lot of positivity in that message that you hear. You hear the rejoice, rejoice. Love is coming to us all. It's like there is, if we just keep carrying on, there is a reward coming, right? At the end. It's like, let's have faith in each other. That seems to be what is a very positive message to the song, because it certainly is, the song certainly has an uplifting feel to the way as you're listening to it, even though that first line is, I woke up and my girlfriend's gone forever. Yeah, great day. But it's got an uplifting tone and feel to it.
Well, because the second line that comes right after that is a new day, a new way, and new eyes to see the dawn.
Yeah.
Now that's definitely okay. There's a half full glass here.
Yeah.
And so look, go your way, I'll go mine, and carry on. We Bob Dylan. We did a podcast about one of Bob Dylan's albums, where you go your way and I'll go mine, and while that was a more cynical song than this, it was sort of that's, and then things will be better. At least for one of us. And whereas this song isn't the, time will tell who is fell. It's like, look, we'll both carry on. And you mention, love is coming to us all, and this justifies another clip from this song, because there's sort of an a cappella vocal time where they carry on, love is coming to us all, and then the song, there's some percussion, and the song transitions into this about as psychedelic as CSNY ever really got.
Where very Doors like.
Some percussion comes in, and then this 6-note bass line with this ethereal organ sound before the vocals come in. And so let's check that out on a track, and we'll continue on the other side.
Carry on, love is coming, love is coming to us all.
All right. There you have it. And really is, it's really kind of a dreamy, spacey feel to that music. And I think that's kind of, where are you going now, my love? Where will you be tomorrow? Will you bring me happiness? Will you bring me sorrow? The questions of 1,000 dreams, what you do and what you see. Mm-hmm. Lover, can you talk to me? That's sort of laying, okay, we've moved into this new way of being. What's going to happen? It could be good, it could be bad. Let's talk. Let's communicate. And I think that is reaching out and just saying, just talk to me, is ultimately a positive message. Yeah. Whatever's going on, let's talk. Yeah. Let's communicate. Let's not be isolated or alienated. And whatever's going to happen, it can be good if we're communicating with each other in an effective way. I think it's got some oomph to it, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. This song came together. It was actually two songs. Two different songs. You can kind of feel a little bit different just tone from the first part of the album, where our focus was, no matter what happens, we carry on. doesn't matter what, we carry on, and that's where the hope is. This second part really sounds more tactical about interactions with a specific person, as opposed to like a theme that can guide you through any type of trouble. And then in between was this kind of, psychedelic jam, which literally was that. When they were trying to put this together, the band had been like jamming, and without any thought that it would be a part of this song, they'd gotten into that groove and decided to use that kind of sandwiched in between these two different pieces. Kind of interesting, the creative process that went to creating this song, which works very well together as a song, but you can feel they switch gears from this notion of, hey, no matter what happens, carry on. That's the strategy. We're gonna have a lot of bad shit that might come our way, but just carry on, and there's good things on, which I think is sound advice. You don't have a whole lot of choice. Keep moving forward. And then they kind of transition with this kind of psychedelic piece, and then it's a more specific type of conversation at the end. But also, again, kind of got a little bit of that upbeat feel to it.
Yeah, and and I consider Neil Young to be a sort of a deeper, more profound song, more literary songwriter than Stephen Stills, but I think that Stills really did a great job on this song of kind of capturing that tension between, change, which is often stressful or unpleasant or unwanted, but is always going to be happening. And we need to carry on, and there's ways that we can do it more effectively than others. If we all can communicate with each other, which I think is a relatively simple concept presented well in one of the more musically interesting pieces on the album or on the side. So it's a very strong opener, in my opinion. And moving on to the second song, which is a Graham Nash song called "Teach Your Children." And all of these songs, none of these songs are really obscure. I mean, "Carry On" and "Teach Your Children" were definitely played on the radio. Helpless is a relatively well-known song. "Woodstock" you definitely hear. But in any case, "Teach Your Children." And we'll just listen to the beginning of that song to kind of give those that might not have heard it a taste before we get into what the song is all about.
Okay, let's do it.
You who are on the road must have a code that you can live by. And so, become yourself, because the past is just a goodbye. Teach your children well, their father's hell did slowly go by, and feed them on your dreams. The one they picked, the one you know by. Don't you ever ask them why. If they told you, you would cry. So just look at them and sigh, and know they love you. Of tender years, can't know the fears that your elders grew by, and so please help them with your youth. They see the truth.
All right. Well, there you have it. And earlier I mentioned that the Grateful Dead were recording their Working Man's Dead album around the same time at the same studio as when this album was being recorded. The steel guitar playing there is Jerry Garcia. And on the inside of the gatefold of the album, there's a picture of Jerry Garcia kind of acknowledging his participation. And the beginning of this song, at least, sounds a lot like Working Man's Dead. You know, Dire Wolf, I think, is the song where the steel guitar playing is the most similar. But it just has that kind of just breezy country feel to it, which is I think it's a good sound, and it reminds me a lot of the Grateful Dead's Working Man's Dead album. But in any case, teach your children, and the opening lyrics, you who are on the road must have a code that you can live by, and so become yourself because the past is just a goodbye. I mean that talks about, in the big picture, about growing up.
Yeah.
And I think specifically that, you who are on the road, I think it's referring generally to hippies. And the reason I think that is because I think that a lot of what led to the kind of the hippie movement in the late 1960s was inspired by people who read Jack Kerouac. And his most well-known novel was called On the Road.
Yeah.
And so, and a lot of hippies, they went kind of on the road. They traveled around from place to place and sort of lived the same lifestyle that the characters in On the Road were living. But I don't think that term that's used in this song is necessarily referring to people who are living that specific lifestyle, but rather people who were inspired by or who kind of had the same ethos as the hippies, kind of a countercultural way of approaching life. Even though I don't think Jack Kerouac particularly approved, when he was still alive, of what was going on in the initial sproutings of the hippie movement. I don't think he really approved of it.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I don't think he can deny. I don't think he can. That was the fruit of a lot of what he wrote, in my opinion.
Well, and clearly you had this. This kind of the let's say the beatnik movement, and then Jack Kerouac, which was kind of more the like this is like what the life can be, this more free on the road life, and with each generation, as we often do, right? Let's take it another step farther. So there was other personal freedoms, not just like locational freedoms, but personal freedoms that people wanted to. They wanted to get outside of norms and this type of thing. And you're right, Jack Kerouac. It's like, well, you don't have to grow your hair long. I mean, you can take a bath, right? And this kind of thing that he probably didn't agree with. But I agree with you 100% that there was a kind of a feeling or a notion or an aspiration that a lot of people gathered from reading On the Road, and taking that type of feeling and living it, and it resulted in kind of the mobility and the gatherings that whether that was in Woodstock or in San Francisco or at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, wherever they happen to be gathering, right? I think that a lot of that stuff did come from this feeling that On the Road brought out. So, and the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, though, I think that a lot of their focus and communication was around the hippie movement, and we're going to talk in a few minutes, I'm sure, about some long hair. And Woodstock. I mean, that was the hippie movement. They were smack dab in the middle of that, without a doubt.
Well, and the teach your children well. Their fathers hell did slowly go by. Feed them on your dreams. The one they pick's the one you'll know by. And so it's the song is speaking to parents. and uh, and the you who are on the road must have a code that you can live by. That's kind of like Bob Dylan. To
Yeah.
live outside the law, you must be honest. I know you always say that you agree. When he is singing to Sweet Marie, and so on the one hand, that who is that line being sung to? The children or the parents?
Mm-hmm.
I think to the parents, because
Yeah.
some of the hippies are now starting to have children.
Mm-hmm.
And don't you ever ask them why. If they told you, you would cry. Just look at them and sigh and know they love you. It's sort of like, maybe you'll never really be able to communicate with your children,
Mm-hmm.
but they love you, and you love them. And
Mm-hmm.
that can be enough. Just feed them on your dreams. I think it's a very positive song. And the second set of I mean, there's basically, two parts to the song. And the second one is, and you of tender years can't know the fears your elders grew by.
Mm-hmm.
So there, the singer is talking to young people. Help them with your youth. They seek the truth before they can die. So here he's telling young people, like, cut your folks some slack,
Yeah. Yeah.
and help them with your youth, so the song it addresses both parents. Teach your children, and then kids. Teach your parents well. Their children's hell will slowly go by.
Yeah.
I mean, it's and Graham Nash was a little more sentimental than I think the other members of the group.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, certainly more than Neil Young.
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
and I think clearly both Stephen Stills and David Crosby as well. But I mean, his other, Marrakesh Express
Yeah.
and Our House, just a lot more sentimentality. But it's a good sentimentality, and it fits in with this post Woodstock theme that I sort of put out there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very pleasant song.
Mm-hmm.
Very radio friendly, and I believe it was released as a single, and kind of got to the heart of a very important part of that era, which was alienation between parents and their teenage, young adult children. It was an important issue that was in flux at that time.
Well, and it still holds out this well when you hear this song. It's memorable as being from that time and from this band. It's held up well as one of their songs, and quite frankly, pretty timeless on the message. You've had parents, you've had a lot of, you've had a long, hard life. You've learned a lot of things from that hardship and that experience. Pass these things, on to your children, and then kids, cut your parents a little slack. Holds true for the next generation after that, when we were kids, and holds through now when we're not just the parents, we're the grandparents, and still holds true. So whether they came out of a specific time, this particular song resonates well all the way along the line.
Teach your children, the second, and another strong track.
Mm-hmm.
Someone mentioned cutting hair, long hair, and whatnot. Well, the third song is a David Crosby song called "Almost Cut My Hair," and this, and just let's just play the beginning of the song to give everyone a feel that may not have heard it, and we'll talk about it after.
I will now proceed to entangle the entire area. almost cut my hair. It happened just the other day. It's getting kind of long. I could have said it wasn't my way, but I didn't, and I wonder why. I feel like letting my freak flag fly. Yes, I feel like I owe it to someone.
All right. The song, you hear some mumbling in the studio from probably David Crosby saying something. And then the song comes in with that sort of melodramatic lead guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And then almost cut my hair. I mean, it's almost like he's anguished. And goes on, it was getting kind of long. But I didn't, and I wonder why. And then I'm going to let my freak flag fly. And then what is sort of I think an interesting way of putting it is I feel like I owe it to someone to not cut my hair, and who that might be, who knows?
Yeah.
But it was sort of that kind of that almost cut my hair, and like is okay. Woodstock's over. Do we need to get back? And it's like, well, no. But there's just something that's worth clinging. That not clinging to is maybe not the right word.
Yeah.
There is something worth holding on to. That came from all that it's either I'm not ready to get rid of it, or I don't want to get rid of it.
Yeah.
At least not entirely.
I find this song kind of interesting. I really feel that, first of all, I think that there's a lot of people from this era of time that are putting a little bit too heavy of a weight on the incredible sacrifice they endured by letting their hair grow long. It's like, yes, there was a price that they paid as far as some jobs that they weren't going to get hired from with long hair. There was commentary and looks and that type of thing, because it wasn't the style. At the time, it wasn't the style of the people that had the money is really what, because it was the style of everybody their age, or at least all the people in their peers. I think that the biggest fear that someone in this era would have if they cut their hair is what their friends would say, not what what they were really able to gain from having this long hair. I don't know what was achieved by people saying, no, I'm not going to cut my hair, I'm gonna keep it here. On the same token, though, I think that this was a generation that said, and hair was only one, there was all these other elements of this lifestyle that said, no, we're not going to do it just because our dad did, or we're not going to do it just because our parents did, or we're not going to do it just because the government says we have to. And we're at least going to stop and ask questions and make our voice or our ideas heard, which that I think was important when we look now into the what that has brought in the future and that type of thing. I do have to say, though, I mean, I always get a kick out of what a statement that it is felt that they were making by no, I'm not going to cut that hair, not going to cut that hair. Especially from David Crosby, who might have been the most hated man in the music industry, right? But yeah, at some point in his career, because he pissed off so many people by being an asshole.
I don't know if he had quite generated that reputation to its fullest extent at this point.
No, not at this point, but that's where he was going. That's where he was destined.
Well, and I think he I think he was kicked out of the Byrds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't. It wasn't like
Yeah.
I'm moving on. I think
Yeah.
he was asked to
Asked to
leave.
leave.
Um, and I don't know if he's uh, saying that it was a burden to keep my long hair. I think he may have been saying that he sort of fought off maybe pressure from somewhere
Yeah.
to cut his hair, and by keeping it, I feel like I owe it to someone. That someone might be himself,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
or the sort of people who are choosing to do like what you were talking about. It's like, no, this is this wasn't a fad. This is just a different. Some people prefer short hair. Some people prefer longer hair.
Yeah.
The freak flag, because in 1970, early 1970, long hair was still definitely not the norm. But you get
Yes.
later into this, you get later into the 70s, and long hair kind of became the norm.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember when we were in elementary school, every time we had to go get a haircut, it always felt kind of like, ugh. I felt so, oh, geez, couldn't we have kept my hair, this and that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when you looked at like early pictures of the Beatles and everyone said, oh yeah, their hair was so long. You look at it like, that don't look long to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, when they were like mop tops. I mean, no,
Yeah.
later,
Yeah.
like in the late 60s, the Beatles had, long hair, like
Yeah.
you think of long hair, but, I mean, so the song lyrically is not as, it doesn't have as much to say as some of the other songs on this album, but the metaphor of cutting one's hair as being sort of giving up their individuality, depending on what it is that's motivating them. If they're cutting their hair because they like short hair, well, that's fine. If they're cutting their hair because they feel they should because of social mores or current fashion or whatnot, well, maybe not so good.
Yeah.
And that's I think an overly simplistic way of looking at it, but because he talks about things like, long hair, it increases my paranoia looking in my mirror and seeing a police car. But I'm not given in an inch to fear.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so he's talking about the fact that the consequences of long hair aren't necessarily, whatever hassle there is of having to, it's, I need to wash my hair, it looks bad, or whatever
Yeah.
one might say, versus, look, I mean, I'm more likely to get pulled over by a cop.
Yeah.
And if you're David Crosby, there's probably contraband in your vehicle,
Yes.
But that I feel like I owe it to someone is, I think, the major point of that song.
Yeah, and it's clearly when and I made a little fun of it there, but first there's this notion of what we think about as the 60s, and the 60s, when we talk about the 60s, was actually the end of the 60s and the beginning of the 70s, right? I mean, what we're talking about here was all the 1970s, this album was released and this type of stuff. So, and also what we think about as the 50s tends to be the early 60s, right? When we talk about the music and the hype and that type of thing. So, but when we think about the 60s, when we think about a lot of the stuff that was going on, look, long hair for men was a part of that. It was one of the things. The flashy, just non-traditional clothing and the beads and jewelry for men. And this type of thing just were all a part of that. But the long hair is probably the one that stands out the most. To have a song that is talking about and addressing that, pretty appropriate for an album like this.
Yeah. And it's probably, I would say it's the middle song on the side, and it's probably the least well known of all the songs on
Yeah.
the side, but it's essential to the kind of the comprehensiveness of this side in terms of CSNY, I think,
Yeah.
and so is a necessary and important part of the side. The fourth song on the side is "Helpless," which is a Neil Young song, one of Neil Young's better songs in my opinion. It's a very simple song, and it appeared on Neil Young's Decade album, which was a triple LP vinyl record that was put out in the I don't know whether it was 1979 or 1980, late 70s, maybe 1980, but I'd say sometime in the late 70s. And it was a retrospective of Neil Young's entire career, and it had this song on it. And he had little handwritten notes about each of the songs on that triple album. And about "Helpless," he mentioned, this was recorded with the original CSNY, and we recorded it at 4 a.m. when everyone was ready to play at my speed. And so why don't we listen to the beginning of "Helpless"
To his speed,
so we can all get a feel for what Neil's speed was, and then we'll continue on the other side.
There is a town in North Ontario, whose dream, comfort, memory to spare. And in my mind, I still need a place to go. All my changes were there. Blue window.
All right. Well, that is Neil's speed, and one of the aspects of this song is I think this is the one track on this side that sounds it could be a solo track, by Neil Young, at least at this point. Now, later, there's another clip that I'm going to have us play that will show why this song never would have been as good as it is without the other three. But it's very Neil Young. He sort of alludes to Northern Canada as a place where he grew up and all of his changes were there. And he really kind of sets the tone of this just very calm, traditional dream, comfort, memory to spare. He paints a very nice picture, I think, and not unlike some of the songs on the Working Man's Dead album. More of just kind of getting back to the basics and taking life as it is. Not to say domestic so much, but just very calm, very tranquil, very very normal on the face of things, and a very comfortable feel. I mean, that's the table that Neil has set on the front end, at least as I see it. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, was written about the emotions itself came out of when Neil had polio when he was 5 years old, and which he still had a little bit of a kind of a limp and that type of thing for his entire life. But while he was going through this, he felt helpless. Now, I think though that it's very appropriate that this song makes it here, because we've talked a little bit about the hangover of Woodstock and this particular time, where you have a lot of people that were feeling, look, there's this energy and this emotion. I mean, are we getting anywhere? Where are we going? And I think that a lot of people who, saw or felt or wanted to feel the world changing weren't seeing it, and they felt helpless about it. I'm trying this, I'm trying that. None of it seems to be working. To your point, all the things that were happening the day before Woodstock are still happening now, right? Nixon's still in office. Vietnam is still going on. We're still having these struggles with our own identity and this kind of thing. And I think that there was a lot of helplessness that people were feeling. I think that there's a lot of that people can relate to today, to a lot of the stuff that is going on. And Neil was able to reach back to a time when he truly, completely was helpless, as not only as a child, but a child in a very difficult and limiting situation, and draw that emotion back, and you can feel it in the way that he's singing the lyrics and coming across in this song. So I think it's a personal story, but also wraps very well with what a lot of people universally were thinking and feeling at the time.
Well, and the second verse of lyrics, after Neil sort of sets the table with this pleasant place that he thinks back to from his childhood, he sings, "Blue windows behind the stars, yellow moon on the rise, big birds flying across the sky, throwing shadows on our eyes, which leaves us." And then, which leads to the helpless chorus of the song. Talking about the things that happened after Woodstock. Now, this was after this album was released, but the first, they did a tour. CSNY did a tour in 1970 in support of this album. And the first concert of the tour, I believe, was in Denver on May 12th of 1970. Well, May 4th of 1970 were the Kent State shootings.
Yeah.
And it was around the very beginning of the tour where CSNY recorded, I believe it was just as a single, the Ohio single, which was, explicitly about the Kent State shootings. And so the helplessness, and let's listen to the chorus, because it really sums up, in my opinion, why this isn't just a Neil Young track. It's a CSNY track. Yeah. And then we can continue our discussion on the other side.
Leave us helpless, helpless,
All right. Well, you can hear, along with Neil, just sort of, talking about, baby, can you hear me now? The chains are locked and tied across the door. Baby, sing with me somehow. And while he's singing those things, the voices in the background, the harmony vocals in the background singing Helpless. It's just it's really a beautiful piece of music. And it really gets to this idea of there's only so much we can do, if anything, to change the world. We can change our own world. I mean, I don't think that that the message isn't that we don't have the ability to make our own lives better, but there are limits on what can be done, and there's the big birds are flying across the sky, throwing shadows on our eyes. and leaves us helpless. There's a, as kind of a, sort of a requiem for the 60s, there's a passage that Hunter S. Thompson wrote in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which was published in, I believe, 1971. And it talks about, because he was a character who kind of came of age, so to speak, in the six, didn't necessarily come of age, but whose persona was sort of
born of the 60s.
Born of the 60s. And here he's in Las Vegas in 1971. And he's hearkening back to an era that wasn't that long ago. And he reads, "There was madness in any direction at any hour. If not across the bay, then up the Golden Gate or down 101 to Los Altos or La Honda. You could strike sparks anywhere. There was a fantastic universal sense that whatever we were doing was right and that we were winning. And that, I think, was the handle, that sense of inevitable victory over the forces of old and evil. Not in any mean or military sense. We didn't need that. Our energy would simply prevail. There was no point in fighting on our side or theirs. We had all the momentum. We were riding the crest of a high and beautiful wave. So now, less than 5 years later, you can go up on a steep hill in Las Vegas and look west. And with the right kind of eyes, you can almost see the high water mark, that place where the wave finally broke and rolled back." And, that's just Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas by Hunter S. Thompson. Interesting read.
Some good stuff.
Interesting read. But that is kind of that's summing up the post Woodstock. It's sort of, like at the end of Easy Rider, where the Peter Fonda character is just saying, "Yeah, we blew it." It's kind of like that, and while that isn't specifically what Neil Young is saying in this song, I think that just this feeling of helplessness is part of what a lot of people sensed when they realized that this moment of transcendence was either temporary or illusory to begin with.
Either way, it had reached its high water mark.
Yeah,
and it was rolling back.
And so it's and I think that this song is just I think it's just a beautiful piece of music, and it kind of gets to that. It gets to that idea of, there's gonna be, there's, periods of light are followed by periods of darkness, which are followed by periods of light. And there's little that individuals can do to control the big wave. And that's, on the one hand, that's a fairly gloomy take on things, but it's kind of, I don't know if gloomy is the right word for the song, but it's definitely melancholy.
Yeah.
And
and there's the other side of that coin, though, is you mentioned it a little bit earlier. It's like it is a sign of where you should be focusing your energies, because you can have an impact on the type of life that you're going to lead and that you're going to have. And if we focus on everything we can around that area where we're not so helpless, and maybe stop worrying and fretting so much about the things that we can't control, we can improve our lives and make things more positive, at least in our own little lives, in our own little communities. So there's something there.
Sing with me somehow. All right. Well, after all that gloom and doom, the fifth and final song on this side is called, it's Woodstock is the name of the song. It was a song written by Joni Mitchell about the Woodstock Festival. And it is a triumphant, it captures that feeling that Hunter S. Thompson was describing before the wave broke, when the wave was at its peak,
when they were winning.
When you had that feeling of inevitable victory, just our side is in the right, and let's and this song is it's a song that you hear on classic rock radio. Many people have heard it. For those for everyone, let's listen to the beginning to kind of get the feel of things before we go on. So, there you have it. I mean, guitar-oriented, upbeat. I came upon a child of God. He was walking along the road. And that really does a nice job of capturing, kind of the hippie with the moccasins and a backpack walking down the road from some car park however many miles back to go to the show. I mean, that in a way that kind of sums up that Woodstock vibe. And then, I said, tell me, where are you going? I'm going down to the Woodstock, to Yasgur's farm. Going to join in a rock and roll band. Got to get back to the land and set my soul free. Yeah. I mean, that's just such a good way of getting at what the feeling was. I'm on my way to Woodstock. Well, what's going to happen? Well, I don't know, but we're going to play some music and try to set our souls free. Yeah. And I mean, this is the kind of song that when you listen, like for people like us who, well, we were alive when Woodstock happened, but we were 6 years old. Oh yeah. We weren't, it wasn't on our radar screen at the time. And either way, we weren't going.
We couldn't have afforded the bus fare out to New York anyway.
Yeah. This is a sort of song where when you listen to it, it makes you feel like you were there. Yeah. And the positive things that came from Woodstock, whatever they were, good music, I think, is the bottom line, is what came from it. But like that, it was good. And you just feel like either you're a part of it, or you, if you would have been at the right age at that time, you would have been a part of it.
Yeah, yeah. No, it starts out, with some, I mean, kind of heavy's the wrong word, but some solid guitar to start the song off. I mean, so solid that Kiss ripped it off for their riff on God of Thunder. It makes a statement to start out with, and I think that is that. Look, what we're starting with here is the music around Woodstock, and then it transitions for the vocals. Like, let's talk about the people that were going there, and that we encounter this child of God on the way. And I agree with you 100%. I mean, this you can just picture the hippie walking down the road, and where's he going? Woodstock, right? It's like I'm going where everybody's going. We're going to Woodstock, and it just had the vision. And kind of interesting because Joni Mitchell wasn't at Woodstock. She was watching when the she was watching news reports of it and that type of thing, and was able to capture from this outside view, which I mean, and to be honest, most of us, that's how we have experienced Woodstock as well. Because we weren't there, but we've seen the pictures and the reports and the movies, and listened to the music that was played there. So you can surely get a sense of it from that. But it certainly nails what I have always seen in my mind, or what my vision of the story of Woodstock was all about.
Well, and because talking about joining and walking with the child of God,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel myself a cog in something turning, and I don't know who I am, but life is for learning. So just sort of capturing that, there something is evolving before our eyes. This thing that's happening is something that's important, and and I don't know, the Woodstock film, which is easily, you can find that on Amazon, or I've got a Blu-ray disc of it with some extras, and it does a good job of showing what Woodstock was like, both the music and other things. A number of songs. In fact, this song, the closing credits are over this song, Woodstock, and at the beginning they play "Long Time Gone" and "Wooden Ships" from CSN's first album. So they definitely, that vibe was there, but. And the final verse, at Neil Young, I think, is playing that guitar at the beginning, that you described, and the guitar solo in the middle is definitely Neil, and it's just this triumphant sound to it, and then when it comes out of the guitar solo, and they redo the chorus, we are stardust, we are golden, we've got to get back to the garden, and then the final verse of the song, where they come, by the time we got to Woodstock, we were 500,000 strong, and everywhere was a song and a celebration. I mean, that is just such a triumphant declaration of here's what was going on. It was great. It's hard not to feel that about Woodstock when you hear that verse. I mean, it makes you feel like, well, I wasn't there, but if I was old enough, I would have been. Just that.
And also the idea, some of the spontaneity of the success of the event comes through here, because it talks about meeting this one child of God, one person making their way there. It doesn't imply from the beginning that there were thousands of people that were going. No, this was just one guy who he'd seen a poster hanging up somewhere, or heard it on the radio, whatever, decided he was gonna go because there was gonna be some music and love at this. Something appealed to him, and he started walking by himself to get there. And it wasn't until they got there that they realized they were 500,000 strong. It's everybody started out on their own, and for whatever reason, and maybe no one can explain it, it did turn into this just massive phenomena that nobody had planned for or anticipated. And little bit of a whether you want to call it luck or destiny or whatever, it was able to go over without any truly significant or disruptive problems, which is probably a good thing for us all, because we've certainly seen the opposite at just about every time they try to do something this big and this important.
Yeah. So I think a very strong closer to the side, and the other songs, the four earlier songs on the album, I mean, they weren't always in the studio together, with the exception of when they were doing the vocals for creating the tracks. I think that Helpless they might have all been in the studio, but they were definitely playing together. Kind of like they were like on the Beatles' White Album, The only song they recorded in the studio all together in one take was Birthday.
Yeah.
And this was kind of that. This was, okay, let's, this is a group effort. This song was the group effort. You know, Neil played the guitar, Stills did the singing, but this was a group effort. And is a good representation of them as a group, is a wonderful sort of encapsulation of the vibe that people who weren't at Woodstock feel it had.
Yeah.
And maybe the people that were at Woodstock feel like it had. And just closes up on a very positive note. Aside that it's a Woodstock ending to a post-Woodstock side.
Yeah, and I think it's a great album and a great, specifically a great side. I think this truly is the best side of the album. I think it's interesting that it ended up working out so well because these were individual efforts. I would say more so than what you saw in, say, the Beatles' White Album, even though it was rare that all four of them got together. I mean, you know, they worked through these songs to a certain extent, but on this album, I mean, they were written and a lot of work was done individually, just kind of letting the other members know, okay, well, we're going to need to do some vocals here. There was 4 individual efforts on this side, and then the final track, which was more of a mix. But the quality of the music that was a result that came out of it created a really great side for, you know, what became a classic album for a band that would really go down to be, you know, one of the symbols of this time in our history.
Yeah. So this is one of my favorite sides. I think it's an important, and for the reasons we've talked about, it's from an important album, and it's accessible to to people with a lot of different kind of musical tastes, so I would encourage anyone who has even a latent interest in sort of the Woodstock era or that whole time period, to check out CSNY, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, Deja Vu, Side 1.
Well, great side, great conversation, Mike.
All right. We will talk to you, Mark, next time.